Grab a seat. How are you?
Very well.
They're all here to see me. They didn't know. I'm kidding. You have a lot of fans here. I guess my first question is an obvious one, but maybe we'll learn something. You're challenging a sitting U.S. president in your party. You have to have good reason to do so. Tell us what it is.
Well, you know what? I saw, first of all, thank you for having me, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I saw a poll yesterday afternoon that said that in 1985, 85% of Americans were proud to be American. 85% of Americans between 18 and 30 years old. And a poll taken last week of people that same age, of Americans that same age, say that only 42% are proud to be American. I want my children to grow up as proud of this country as I was. And, you know, I grew up at a time when we believed with really good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, and that we were a moral authority around the world, that we were, and there was plenty of evidence for that. The world wanted our leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying, but people all over the world looked to the United States of America for leadership. When my uncle was president, he lived up to that role, and there is now more statues to him, more boulevards named after him, more avenues, more universities in Africa and Asia and Latin America than any other president. And it evinced because he didn't focus on shooting people and on sending, he never sent combat veteran abroad or combat soldier abroad to die. He sent 16,000 military advisors to Vietnam and then ordered them all home 1 month before he died, and they were allowed to participate in combat exercises. Some of them did. And instead, he sent Peace Corps volunteers. He created the Alliance for Progress. He created USAID. He wanted to put America on the side of the poor all over the world and on the side of democracy, but not at the force of a gun. In this country, you know, I grew up at a time that was called the Great Prosperity, when we created the middle class, which was the greatest economic engine ever created, the American middle class, and it was the foundation stone of our democracy. A guy asked me, a New Yorker editor who interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, said to me, "What qualifies you to be president? You've never been in Congress, you've never been a governor, you've never been in the Senate." And for me, that's probably the best qualification, because and I'm not saying anything bad about people. I think most people who are in public office are there because they want to be good citizens, they want to be good public servants. But the system nowadays tends to co-opt you. And, you know, to run for senator in this state, Sean, it costs $100 million. And that means that you have to spend most of your time jetting between Southampton and Palm Beach and Los Angeles and hang out with billionaires who are going to give you money. My job over the past 40 years has been suing government agencies for corruption. And representing people, 10,000 families in Smelter, West Virginia, who are poisoned by zinc and lead from a DuPont smelting facility. The 1,000 families I'm now representing in Columbiana County, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, for the Norfolk Southern spill. The 10,000 families I represented in the DuPont case who were poisoned by PFAS and PFOAs, and the 40,000 people I represented in Monsanto. And I end up, and fishermen who I've represented, as you know, my whole life on the Hudson and other places. And I end up seeing how people live, and I've seen the disintegration of the American dream and the American experience. I've seen not only the social and economic deprivation that now exists in this country that's like what I saw in Latin America when I was a kid, and I never dreamed I'd see it in this country. 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency.
How scary is that?
35% of people in this country do not make enough money to pay for basic human needs for transportation, housing, and food. So they have to make choices every day. They have to listen to the baby crying in the room next door and have to wonder whether that baby is $30 sick or $40 or $200 sick before they bring him to a hospital. They have to choose between heat and food, between medicine and food. My wife and I had this discussion. My wife grew up very, very poor. And until she, got a break by getting the job from Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm, she was living in
By the
poverty.
way, she's great on that show.
Thank
She
you.
really is.
Yeah.
You like that show? Good show.
And she said to me, the whole time I was living paycheck to paycheck. And she said,
by the way, so was I.
Yeah.
I can identify with that.
and that
Sucks.
is
Not fun.
It's frightening. And she said, we were talking about how depression and mental illness rates and suicide rates have risen just dramatically in this country. And she said, well, being poor makes you depressed because you're scared all the time and you think there's something wrong with you. And, this is not the America that
Let me ask you, because I hear everything. I'm listening very closely to what you're saying, and you're saying that we can do better. And I agree with you. We have nearly, over 60% of this country living paycheck to paycheck. The average American owes $54,000, $55,000 in debt. People are cashing in their pensions to get bare necessities, or they're putting stuff on credit cards at, 22.5% interest rate. Now, I would argue that's part of the Biden economy. And the only difference where we might separate here is whether or not you think it ought to be a government program. I think it's free market economies that inspire entrepreneurs, and you have the freedom and the ability to bring goods and services to market versus, say, the government giving you your bare necessities. I mean,
Yeah, of course. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live on the government dole. And it is. I mean, we don't have free market capitalism in this country. We have corporate crony capitalism. We have a system of cushy socialism for the super rich, and this kind of brutal, savage, merciless capitalism for the poor. And it's all designed to strip mine the middle class of this country of all of their equity, all of their assets, and move it to the upper echelons.